Hi, good morning. I presume you saw this video somewhere on YouTube and you chose to actually watch it. So if you want to get the full narrative and the title interested you, I'd recommend you stay for the full thing because it'll mean you actually understand what I'm trying to say here. Plus, watching the full video is healthy for your attention span because you're not forcing your brain to watch non-stop 30-second clips on your phone. Anyways, let's start. Right. Without Christ, your life and you have no purpose. Where am I going with this? So, without God, your life doesn't mean anything. You're literally, well, by the narrative and doctrine of science, just atoms, right? You're atoms going to work, speaking with other atoms, sleeping on atoms, eating more atoms for food, right? To survive. And that's all you do. That's all you are. If there isn't a God that created you. Now, to me, that's really unsettling, okay? But it's fine because I don't necessarily believe in just that narrative that there is no God. I believe in God. And therefore, I feel that my life has a purpose. Well, I know it has a purpose because I know there is a God giving it purpose, right? So, there is actually, like I said, there's no reason to exist or continue existing without God. If God doesn't exist, there's no reason to live or continue existing, because you could just cease to exist by your own hand and nothing would change. It would just be atoms remaining atoms, right? Even though you're designed, you're not designed to self-destruct. You could, and you have the free will to do that. But, it wouldn't change anything if you turned from atoms that go to work to atoms that lay motionless, okay? And that's a horrible way to live. Without God, life means nothing, and you're just that. And there's no difference between you being moving, animated atoms and non-animated, stationary atoms. So, if you don't believe in God, what do you actually believe for? Like, what do you actually live for? What do you believe in? Because what is the point of life? Is it anything meaningful? Is it anything that will outlive the test of time, right? Because, I'm assuming that you don't actually remember or know of your great-great-grandfather. Maybe you know your great-grandfather. And if you do know your great-great-grandfather, do you know his dad or his granddad? Probably not. You probably don't even know their name. You might know as far as your great-granddad, but I doubt that you know much further than that, unless you have some sort of thing for your family tree. So, whatever they did during their life, did it, in the material world, outlive the test of time? Well, judging by the fact that you likely can't remember it, probably not. But if they were believers and they lived by the doctrine of Christ, they lived on and left the world. Doesn't matter, right, what's left down here, because they continue on. So, anyone who does believe in him will be living for something that can outlive time. And anyone who does believe in him isn't just living for 80 years and then dying, but rather living for infinite years. But why specifically Christ, you might ask? There's so many religions worshipping different gods. Why specifically Jesus Christ? Well, you could believe in God, but without Christ specifically, you do actually just live for 80-something years, depending whatever the average is, or unless, natural causes gets you sooner. So, what I'm trying to say is eternal life is not achieved through anything but Christ, because Christ was the only one who lived, died, and then came back after death, right? So you were already designed in the image and likeness of God, as you are now. But part of that is your free will, for example, right? And that part of your internal design will never change. Your free will, or like your ability to gain reason or wisdom. But you could also choose to live like God, or to be like God, because of that innate, inherent ability to freely choose between one option and the other, right? And the best example you have, if you want to be like God, is God himself as man, which he came down to us 2025 years ago and lived life like basically a perfect human being in God's image, right? He was fully God and fully man, right? So the fully man part matters to you because you're fully man only. But you can, aspire to be like that and work to be like that. Even though, you're inherently distant from God. So regardless of that, you can still, work towards that. But the fact that you're inherently distant is part of man's fall and separation from God, which, by the way, was a choice of free will that humans made. And you can overcome this by making this difficult decision to live like Christ, to be more like Christ, right? And live in respect to the teachings of God as man. Ultimately, he will be the one who judges you. That's Christ. So you can ask him to forgive you, and if you're true to it, he will. Because if you read the Bible, you'll know that Jesus died on the cross after practically being tortured to death. And the whole purpose of that pain and suffering and death was to allow you to live on, regardless of the fact that you've sinned and turned away from God multiple times, infinite times in your life, like you couldn't even count it. Regardless of that, the fact that he bled and died on that cross means you can continue living, right? Every time you've sinned or done something that is unlike him is like slashing his back with a whip with bits of fucking sharp metal in it, or grabbing a hammer and driving a nail into wood through his hand, like here, right there, where like some of the most complex anatomy in your body goes on. Driving a fucking massive nail right through there with a hammer. Every time you sin against him. But he's already gone through all that pain. He's already experienced all of the sin you've ever committed and all of the sin anyone in the history of time has ever committed, and experienced it in that death on the cross and in the pain and suffering he went through. He went through that pain so that you wouldn't have to go through the pain of just your own ones. He went through the pain of everyone who has ever lived, everyone who will ever live, so that everyone who has ever lived, is currently living, and will ever live, will have the ability, the option, because that option used to not exist before him. They'll have the option to choose him and say, no, I don't want this sin to be a part of me. I want to be like you. Forgive me for my sin. And he will do it because he didn't go through all this pain just to then say, no, I don't forgive you. Live your life in separation from me. No, he specifically did this so that everyone who ever lived, all of his children, would have the option to continue living forever at the cost of this pain and suffering, right? He didn't die so you could sin. That's something some people misunderstand. He felt all of this, felt the pain of all this sin and died so that you wouldn't. So why would you continue sinning if that's just another wound? Right? That's not how that works. He didn't die so that you could go out and live your life literally against, with a narrative against of what he said, right? If he hadn't done this, life would be like a one and done game. You'd live, you'd die, and you wouldn't continue living. And that would be the end of you, right? But it doesn't matter because you can continue living under some conditions that aren't even difficult to meet if you trust in God and read the Bible, which are accounts of him, especially in the New Testament. So yeah, I hope this helped. But ultimately, your life is meaningless if not in alignment with Christ. Pretty harsh one, but I feel like the point of this channel needed to get out sooner because I was just postponing making religious videos. I know it was a quite harsh one, but that's just how sometimes it needs to be. We're talking about life and death here, aren't we? and purpose, so it's not going to be easy. If you like this sort of content, take a look at my other stuff. It's all on my channel. I have a goal to get to 500 subscribers and share my message with them and potentially help 500 people. So if this is something you'd like to help me with, or you think I helped you in anything, you can do it. And if you decide you don't like me after doing it, you can always undo it if you want to. Anyways, Christ is King, and see you next time.